Once upon a time, not so long ago, in a country far, far away, yes, in France, there was a kingdom of unfairness, tyranny and grave inequality. A single privileged minority ruled the majority with an iron fist, and the majority had no say in the matter whatsoever. However, this all changed one fateful night in 1789, when the spark of revolution ignited a spark in the French people, and the ancient regime was overthrown. The French Revolution, as it became known, was a powerful event that shook the world back then, and its ramifications are still felt all throughout the world today. So how did it start? What happened during the revolution? And why was it so important? Let's explore all these questions and more, and find out how the events of the French Revolution changed the world forever. Before the revolution, French society consisted of three estates called states. Let's explain each of them. The high clergy, there was the noble ones, and the low clergy, there was the plebs. There was no taxation, but they did get a little something special from the peasants, an annual tithe which was in the form of 10% of their crops. The whole educational system was run and controlled by the church, and if they didn't like what you wrote, they had the power to censor it. So watch your back, writers. The nobility was the top dogs of society. They were literally treated like royalty. They strutted around with their noses in the air, all the while knowing that nobody dared challenge their authority. They owned all the prized real estate, passed down from generation to generation, like prized heirlooms. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that they didn't have to pay taxes like the lower class. They were given tribute by the peasants, as if they were some sort of king or queen. On top of that, they also got to hold court and have key administrative roles. Talk about a sweet deal. Also called the common state, it consisted of the bourgeoisie, merchants, bankers, professionals, intellectuals, and the peasantry, small landowners, tenant farmers or day laborers, and urban artisans, sometimes grouped in guilds. They paid taxes and had no political powers or rights. Impressive as it may seem, the first and second states consisted of a privileged few representing about 3% of the population. Otherwise, the third state represented about 97% of the population, but had to support the other two states with its taxes. It all began back in 1789, when the people of France had had enough of the tyrannical absolutist monarchy of Louis XVI and were ready to take a stand. The brave citizens of France rallied together to say goodbye to the archaic old-fashioned regime and make way for a strong and fair republican government. Little did anyone know the impact this momentous event would have around the world, revitalizing the values of the French Enlightenment and inspiring the phrase liberty, equality and fraternity that has been chanted around the world ever since. It's safe to say that while France has a rich history of cuisine and fashion, the revolution will go down in history as the country's most defining moment. Things were about to get real. The everyday citizens of the third estate were done with being taken advantage of by the elite first and second estates. So one fateful day, they picked up their pitchforks and stormed the Bastille to take the power back. It was like a scene out of a movie. Citizens were chanting for freedom and the monarchy's authority was thrown out the window. This was the spark that ignited a huge fire leading to the historical and epic French Revolution. A revolution that would forever change the face of society and create a new world based on the fundamental rights of all humans. So if you're ever feeling lonely and defeated, just remember that it only takes a spark to light a revolution. The year 1789 brought with it spark that was to init one of the most intense periods of global change of the 18th century, the French Revolution. The nation of France came alive with activity as people rose up in rebellion against the monarchy and the Catholic Church, hoping to seize control of their fate. What ensued was 10 long and tumultuous years, from 1789 to 1799, which showed the drafting of the very first French Republic Constitution, the establishment of universal human rights, and unfortunately, a huge dose of violence. Both sides experienced bloodshed as the king's troops fired upon the revolutionaries, and the revolutionaries enacted their own version of justice on the monarchists via the infamous guillotine during the Reign of Terror 1792-1794. What's more, the revolutionary forces even had to face the armies of Austria and Prussia, both of whom saw the changes in France as a threat to their own statu quo, and so sent their troops in a failed attempt to defend the monarchy. In the end, however, the revolution could be quelled, and despite all the turmoil and revenge-taking, it ultimately led to one of the most sweeping social and political transformations of its time. After all the blood, sweat and toil of the French Revolution, it all came down to a little coup d'etat. Who would have thought that it would be Napoleon Bonaparte, the man whose ambition knew no bounds, but who would rise to power and twist the winning revolution into a monarchical system? Talk about throwing a spanner in the works, who said revolutions has to end with a cry of victory. This revolution ended with the triumphant Bonaparte not crying liberty, equality, fraternity, but rather Empire, I'm here. The causes of the French Revolution were many. Among them, the following stand out. Back in the Middle Ages, feudalism was the rule of the land, with the nobles reigning supreme and owning all the land, while the peasants worked the land, getting no compensation. There was also manorial rights, which allowed the nobles to collect tribute and tolls from the unfortunate peasants, and the church collecting a tithe. It was super unfair to the school folk at the bottom on the social ladder. Fast forward to the present era, or what we like to call ancient regime, and society was no different, with merchants, bankers and professionals at the top and the working class left behind. It was the same cycle, but then something magical happened. Urban life and the expansion of commerce changed the way the game was played. The wealthy bourgeois elite stepped up the political power game, while the artisans and simple citizens had the chance to get ahead with education and political participation. It was an exciting time, and with all the newspapers and clubs available, there was no end to the possibilities for those lower on the social ladder. The French had arrived on the scene, and everyone was in shock. They achieved a luxurious lifestyle, and even the down and out could now get a proper education. Their mortality rate plummeted and life expectancy skyrocketed. Before you knew it, their population skyrocketed up to a whopping 26 million. Everyone was living the high life, with food and supplies pouring in left and right. Well, until 1789, that is. That's when everything went south. The entire countryside was hit with a terrible harvest, and the demand for food suddenly surpassed what was available. How unfortunate! These years saw the dawn of a revolution in thought, known as the Enlightenment. With its ambition of replacing religious superstition with the power of reason, it was a movement that aimed to bring illumination to a world previously shrouded in the shadows of religious beliefs and practices. Influential Enlightenment thinkers, including Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau, had a significant impact, leading the bourgeoisie and aristocracy to challenge the divine right of absolute monarchs like Louis XVI. In its place, philosophical theorists put forward the notion of a government based on the separation powers, constitutional liberties, and the enshrining of national sovereignty. Thus, the Enlightenment breathed fresh life into the world, offering a beacon of knowledge and liberty. The late 1700s were a crazy time. King Louis was in hot water not just from the American Revolutionary War, but also from two back-to-back frosters and poor harvesters. People were suffering through food shortages, rising flour and bread prices, and a decrease in commercial activity. The king, trying to make ends meet, tried to increase taxes but was forced to gather the Estates General, aka representatives from the clergy, nobles and third estate, to get out of his woes. Talk about stress. Yes, the French Revolution had a significant impact not only on the country but on the entire world, shaping what we know today, all because of a single event in history. On the 26th of August 1789, the French National Constituent Assembly descended from their ivory tower and listed 17 articles, quickly dubbing it the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. For the first time, citizens were given the keys to the promised land. Liberty, property and security were handed to them on a silver platter, and equality before the law was set in stone. If you had cash or if you didn't, if you were from Patagonia or Poughkeepsie, everyone was made equal under the law. This event has been so monumental that it has helped shape the world as we know it today, inspiring us to create our Charter of Human Rights. Who could have guessed that it all began with an epic brainstorm session on a late August day back in 1789? The French Constitution of 1791, the cornerstone of one of the most revolutionary documents of all time. Sure, it was over 2 centuries ago, but its principles are still relevant today. This important document set the standard for modern government, instituting groundbreaking principles such as freedom of thought and press, and religious freedom that has long since provided a foundation for all citizens to enjoy their rights. Although, as an added bonus, it did away with those pesky hereditary distinctions, meaning you can finally be your own person. The first estate, the clergy, and the second estate, the aristocrats, lived a life of opulence and comfort, while the rest of the people of the land suffered in poverty. But then, the people had enough. They wanted things to change. So the revolutionary movement began. They were determined to get rid of the estate-based society that held them down and allowed the clergy and the aristocrats to stay in power. Ultimately, their effort was successful and those privileged to estates lost their control of land and the tax exemptions they used to keep themselves rich and comfortable. After the French Revolution, France rose from the ashes of feudalism, determined to give rise to a glorious nation-state. This marks the birth of a bold new ideology, nationalism, thanks to the ever-expanding military campaigns of Napoleon Bonaparte. This new wave of sentiment began to sweep across Europe like wildfire. Nationalism was a force to be reckoned with, driven by loyalties to the nation and fierce resistance to any and all foreign interference. Well, it all started long ago with those clever Frenchies setting off on a revolution. They wanted to shake things up a bit and show the world that change was possible. So they stood up, shook their fists in the air and proclaimed their revolutionary ideals. This sparked a spark that spread around the world, as it first energized the bourgeoisie and Enlightenment thinkers, who sought to create similar systems in Latin American countries, such as Haiti, Mexico, Chile and Argentina, and then onto Europe, where monarchies fell and constitutions were established. But the revolution wasn't over yet. A major player onto the world stage has still yet to make her voice heard. Enter the Russian Revolution of 1917, where the working class won a kind of representation that had never been seen before. And just like that, the changes in the French Revolution eventually wrought, like the concept of nationhood, right as citizen, and so on, still permeate our lives today. So remember, when you want to make a change, it's never too late to follow the example set out by those clever French revolutionaries.